everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation right here, KYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. On this beautiful Tuesday, which is not actually all that beautiful because it's rainy and kind of crappy and super humid out, which is lovely and wonderful when you're upstairs. That giant sound that you hear in the background, that is the air conditioner. So, yeah. Pay no mind to that, okay? And by the way, lower that table just a bit. Okay. Fun stuff to start the show off with, right? So everybody, thank you and welcome to the show. We got a great one for you guys today, including the Japanese, how the Japanese are trying to teach Trump about trade. Okay, that's interesting. Then, of course, Trump talks to Tucker Carlson about homelessness. An interesting conversation, to be sure. Then we have election security, piece of legislation that's currently working its way through the government. Get some details on that, what's going on there. Then we have some healthcare-related news, including an ex-drug company executive, somebody that worked rather high up in the company, Eli Lilly, basically explains how they got to price gouging people, because it wasn't always like that. And so get the details of that transformation, what happened from somebody who was inside and heard these conversations. It's a really enlightening and infuriating story. So you're going to appreciate that deep dive into this, our horrible pharmaceutical industry. Then we have a patient arrested while black. Walking while black with an IV. I kid you not. So, amazing stories here. Deep dives into important issues. And, of course, the normal Trump foolery. Foolery? That's a word, right? Well, anyway, even if it's not a word, it's a word. Good enough for me. Okay, anyway. Please smash that like button. Please share the stream. Really, really important that you do, so that I can get more viewers and then eventually fix that corner, which looks like crap. And it does too. So I need to figure out how to fix that, so it doesn't look horrible. So ignore that side for a moment. All right. So before I get into the show, I do want to, of course, thank some patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation. I want to thank Ann Summers, Rachel Shipman, C. Innocent, Trevor Reeves, and Reynold Harris. So thank you to those patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation. That's how you can go and support the show, support the stream, and help me fix those little issues that kind of annoy me and I can't really fix right now because I'm on air. Okay, anyway. No, Colorado, no. If there's a place that's perpetually about 50 degrees, I would move there. Just perpetually. So, I would love to find a place like that, but I don't think it exists. All right, anyway. I love you guys. That's the comments and the interaction in this show. It's one of the best parts. It's one of the best parts. Okay. Yeah, it's all green screen. Right, but you notice that little division right there? It just looks... I don't know. If you guys can't notice, then maybe I'm just making too big of a deal about it. But I notice. I see it. I see it. So, well, at least you guys can't see it. All right. Anyway... let's move in. Let's get to the stories. Okay. All right. So President Donald Trump doesn't like to read. I think we know that already. He hates reading. He doesn't really do it. He doesn't read his briefings, etc., right? Now, lucky for the Japanese, they figured out a way to bypass that and get directly to the baby in the White House. Now, this is according to a report from Axios. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Friday presented U.S. President Donald Trump with a straightforward, colorful chart to explain Japanese investment in the United States. White House official told the news agency. Trump met with Abe on Friday morning at the G20 summit in Osaka, Japan. Now, New York Times reporter, this is Peter Baker, right? So he was there and he tweeted out a picture of the chart. And he said this: like others around the world, the Japanese have figured out how to play to a visiting Trump. Now, let me show you that image, just to show you what I'm talking about here. All right. So, oh, look, you can see it. Japan has 5 additional investments in just 1 month. Notice the bolded letters and the American kind of style, design. Oh, look, it's even got a new sticker, like a price shock sticker on it. I mean, that's amazing. Look at that. So that's what we have, right? The chart's headline, as you could see, 5 new additional investments in 1 month, big red letters. Keywords are underlined. Boxes spell out how much was invested and point to a location on the map that even Donald Trump could find. Wow. So here we go. He's such a child. I mean, he's such a baby. And here you have the world leaders who know this, and so they go out of their way to design things to appeal to the baby. Like they just know. Okay, Donnie, here you go. Here's where we invested in America, okay? Like right here on that map. Can you point to where you are in the map right now? Very, very good, Donnie. Let's get you a cheeseburger, some Diet Coke, okay? Maybe later we'll have some Twitter time. Does that sound good? Twitter time? Oh, my God. Oh, Jesus. Now, the question is, did it work? Did it work? Well, the president had referred to the investments in remarks to reporters after the meeting with Abe. He said, quote, I appreciate the fact that you're sending many automobile companies into Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and North Carolina, a lot of our states. He also said, quote, they're building magnificent plants. Well, there you have it. I mean, at least it's effective. I guess that's what you have to do when you have a man-child as a president that refuses to read and has a super, super short attention span. Squirrel. Where's that squirrel? Oh, hey, look, trade from the Japanese. Dear God. Here we go. And of course, it's not just the Japanese that are doing this. Other foreign and U.S. officials had also been forced to come up with new ways to get their point across to the president. For example, the European Commission President, Jean-Claude Juncker, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, he reportedly explained trade policy using, quote, colorful cue cards at a meeting last July. Colorful cue cards. Look, this one's purple. This one's red. Can you say what this color is? It's blue. Oh, dear freaking God. Okay. Now, a source also told Reuters back in 2017, and I keep going back to this because I don't think people go back to this enough and just kind of realize how dumb President Trump really is. The source told Reuters in 2017 that National Security Council officials had made sure that Donald Trump's name was included as frequently as possible in intelligence briefings because he was more likely to pay attention if he saw himself mentioned. Other officials said he preferred memos with lots of pictures and charts, or as I think in that article that I'm quoting here, killer graphics and maps. Killer graphics and maps. They even tried condensing briefings during or before a trip. I think it was either an Asia trip or a European trip. I think it was Asia. They condensed it into tweet-length segments so that President Trump might actually read them. And you know what's funny? That he still doesn't read. He doesn't read. I mean, come on, man. Really? Now, I love their excuse, of course, for the baby, because you got to always come up with an excuse, right? A senior administration official told the news agency, quote, oh, he just likes to visualize things. The guy's a builder. He spent his whole life looking at architectural renderings and floor plans. You know what that is? That is a weak sauce excuse. It's not at all true. When's the last time Donald Trump actually built something? I mean, really? They don't let him build buildings anymore. Why? It's because every time he tries, he goes bankrupt. Look, for example, back in the 1970s, Donald Trump wanted to build a giant mall. He wanted to be a tremendous wall, right? Or a mall, sorry. This would be 150 stories. That's a shopping mall, right? Now, according to NPR, the project called Riverside South was, to say the least, very controversial, said developer Jeff Gurl, chairman of the firm Newmark, Rubb, Knight, and Frank. Now, Riverside South, he said, was a very risky project at the time, and a lot of people questioned the viability of building apartments so far west. At the time, Trump reportedly owed Chase Bank millions of dollars on the loan for West Side property. As he waited for city approval, his interest bills ended up piling up. Meanwhile, his Atlantic City projects, casinos, were going bust. Donald Trump, again, you have to really kind of impress upon the idea that Donald Trump is the only person in the world that can go bankrupt from a freaking casino. I thought the House always wins. No, with Donald Trump, even the House loses because he's a moron. Because he has no business sense at all. But anyway, Trump still had won city approval. But because of his mounting bills, his bankruptcies, the fact that he's not a rich person and a terrible businessman, he ended up selling to the development to investors from Hong Kong long before it was finished. But as part of that deal, and this is where it becomes more relevant here, to the fact that Donald Trump hasn't built a damn thing in decades, is that they allowed him to keep his name on the building, to basically contract out his name. And that's what Donald Trump does. He licenses his name out to developers. Well, now, since he's been president, and one of the most unpopular presidents in the history of the United States, or at least in modern history, that name, once he gets out of office, is not going to be worth anything. But Trump doesn't build buildings. He just doesn't. So when they make that excuse that, oh, no, it's because he's got this architectural mind. No, he doesn't. You ever seen the stuff that he has designed? It's gaudy, old, grossly, gold and everything. It's super, super gaudy, and just it's gross. It's gross to look at. He has no design chops whatsoever. But so that is that's Donald Trump for you, and it's what a sad excuse for Donald Trump's monumental laziness and stupidity. Now the Japanese, they know, and the rest of the foreign community, foreign governments, they know how stupid our president is. And they know how to take advantage of him. Great. Wonderful. Okay. All right. More stupid. All right. So President Trump was talking with Fox host Tucker Carlson, and the subject of homelessness came up. And of course, it was terrible. Let's take a look.
Very different from our cities.
Yep. Well, no, some of our cities.
Some of our cities. But New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, they've got a major problem with...
It's very sad.
...with filth.
Very sad.
Why is that?
It's a phenomenon that started 2 years ago. It's disgraceful. I'm going to maybe, and I'm looking at it very seriously, we're doing some other things, as you probably noticed, like some of the very important things that we're doing now.
We're doing important things. Now, wait a minute here. So, now, look, he talks, again, about homelessness, right? And how, there's nobody going to the bathroom in the streets in Japan. Oh, maybe it's because they actually have a little bit more of a welfare state than we do here in the United States. Slightly more. I'm not entirely sure about that, let's be honest. I know that people work very, very hard in Japan, and they work a lot of hours. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of job burnout. So that's not exactly the best model to look forward to, right? That said, what's going on here in America can be explained by a lot of different factors, right? None of which Donald Trump actually gets correct in any of this. But anyway, so now here's the thing. If that's true, if this homelessness phenomenon only started about 2 years ago, well, you've been president for about 3 years, almost 4 years, right? Wouldn't that be partly your fault? I mean, again, it happened on your watch. Now, we know that's not at all true because homelessness has been a problem for, I think, as long as human history. Let's be honest with you. We've got a big problem with people not being able to afford homes in big cities, gentrification, redlining, stagnant wages, tech companies that continue to push people further out, rising rents. But he doesn't talk anything about that. No. You know what's funny is that this would be, you think this would be something the federal government could actually try to do something about. Like, I don't know, maybe the president could talk about this and maybe push Congress to do some action. If only the president of the United States was here and maybe he could actually do something about this issue. Now, he continues by, of course, blaming, well, you'll see.
You can't have what's happening where police officers are getting sick just by walking the beat. I mean, they're getting actually very sick. Where people are getting sick, where the people living there are living in hell too, although some of them have mental problems where they don't even know they're living that way. In fact, perhaps they like living that way. They can't do that. We cannot ruin our cities. And this is the liberal establishment. This is what I'm fighting. I don't know if they're afraid of votes. I don't know if they really believe that this should be taking place. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And we may be, I had a situation when I first became president. We had certain areas of Washington, D.C. where that was starting to happen. And I ended it very quickly. I said, you can't do that. When we have leaders of the world coming in to see the president of the United States and they're riding down a highway, they can't be looking at that. We're looking at it very seriously. We may intercede. We may do something to get that whole thing cleaned up. It's inappropriate.
All right. So, look. So there's kind of a lot to unpack there. For one, he says, look, the mental illness, right? That some people, that they want to be on the street. They don't even know. Well, maybe that's something that the government could do something about. Again, you're the president of the United States. Maybe you could talk about, I don't know, mental health. Instead, in reality, what the Trump administration did is they actually cut funding for mental health. And not only that, but they also wanted to cut funding for to help homeless people. So, come on, man. But he says, oh, no, we can't have what's happening. Well, you know what? I actually agree. We can't have what's happening. But, of course, the focus on that when he talked about the police is that, well, the police are getting sick walking down the street. Later on in the interview, he also said, well, we got to find something to do with the people. What do you do with the people? I don't know. You give them homes, moron. I mean, come on. I actually care about the people living in the street. He does not. Nobody should have to live in the street. I believe housing is a human right. And unless you guarantee housing as a human right, you will always have homeless people. And so you know what happened? Utah had the same problem, right? So what did Utah do? They gave homeless people houses. And guess what? There were less homeless people. Who would have thought? Wow, I can't believe it. Who knew if you would give a homeless people a home that they would not be homeless anymore? It worked. It worked. And actually a lot of those people, along with job training and mental health, mental health care, they ended up being more productive citizens. So it actually did work. And it actually ends up being cheaper for the government to provide people for homes than actually continue to lock them up in prisons, which is what they do right now. So turns out when you invest in people, they might have a chance of becoming successful and then giving back. I know, weird. Now, Tucker Carlson, that's another thing, right? So Tucker Carlson, he's been talking a lot about poverty. He's been talking a lot about taxing corporations, which is weird, going against the Koch brothers. You might think that, okay, look, maybe Tucker Carlson, maybe he cares. Maybe he's actually one of the few people on the right that's actually going to talk about this issue, talk about homelessness and income disparity and things like that. No, he doesn't. He didn't care about that. No, this is another way to attack liberals for an issue that, of course, shouldn't be ideological. Homelessness is not an ideological issue. There are homeless liberals, homeless conservatives, homeless veterans. There's a big issue. And for Trump, of course, he doesn't care about the homeless, right? The thing is like, oh, you can't see the homeless. You just can't have that. We just don't need to see that. It's an image problem for him. It's not the fact that, man, we got to help these people. The homeless people everywhere, we got to help them. We got to get them into homes and get them into jobs and things like that so they can pick up their lives, man. Get off, the people that are dealing with addiction, helping them be able to put their lives together. And a home makes a big, big difference. You got to give them a home to have a job and all that stuff. But for Trump, again, it's not about helping them. It's about they make me look bad. When the world leaders come to visit, I look bad because there are homeless people here. He also claimed that when he had first became president, that the homeless population in Washington, D.C., because of him, had dropped, when in reality, of course, it is at a 13-year low. And homelessness in the United States, for the most part, has remained very steady. So he continues to lie and lie and lie. He can't stop himself. He can't help himself with the constant lying and fabrications, and of course, trying to make himself look good. He doesn't actually care about this issue at all. I mean, and unfortunately, it's not just it's not just Republicans. It's also Democrats that don't care as much about the homeless too. They only see the homeless in very simple ways. In reality, of course, there's a lot of different homeless people. A lot of them are veterans, even. So, hey, Donald Trump, you want to do something about homelessness? You want to intervene, as you say? Well, why don't you find all the homeless veterans and give them a home? Guarantee housing is a human right if you have served in the U.S. military. That shouldn't be a hard thing to do. Think about the reaction even from the right wing, right? Are you going to be against something that gives people who have served in the United States military and have found themselves homeless to guarantee them a house, somewhere to live? Maybe not a house, but like an apartment or just somewhere to live, right? Which would end up actually being cheaper than having them stay out in the streets. You might even get a lot of conservatives on board if you are pro-military. Now, of course, they're not going to do that because the first question will be from hardcore right-wingers is, how are you going to pay for that? Well, we did give about $1.5 trillion to corporations. Maybe you can rein some of that back in. Or use some of the bloated defense budget to maybe pay for those homes for the veterans. But, of course, they're not going to do anything like that. Of course. Why? Because he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't care at all. Come on, man. Trump literally despises the poor. And we know that because he's talked about it before. He considers them losers because they don't have money. He doesn't want poor people working in the White House. He said that before. And he doesn't even want poor people on the golf course. That's who Donald Trump is. And Tucker Carlson is another rich, entitled kid. I don't think he's serious at all. I don't think he's actually, I think what he's doing is he's pandering to an audience. There is a need. There's a desire, I think, on the right to address some of these issues. Why? Because they're finally affecting white people. They're finally affecting white people. And Tucker Carlson is a white nationalist. And so he's coming up and he's saying, oh, these are issues: income and wealth inequality, income and wealth disparity, corporations screwing over regular working people. Well, that's affecting white people now. I didn't care when it affected black people. Don't care about them. But white people, well, now I've got to look out for them because, well, that's how I can get my audience. He pretends to care for the ratings. That's who Tucker Carlson is. And so Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump, they're just two peas in a twisted pod. Okay. So, I think I'll take a quick break here. We're going to come back. We've got election security. Then the drug manufacturer story. That again, you're going to be enraged when you hear that. So we're going to come back. We'll do that. And then walking while black. We got another one of those stories. So stay right here. Leave your comments, questions, super chats. We'll be back right in a couple of minutes, right here around the nation. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TWD Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, so got some great comments, questions, or not questions, but just comments from you guys, which is great. I love that. But first, I just want to congratulate Tank Girl for getting married next week. So that's awesome. Congratulations. Very, very happy for you. I hope it is amazing. So there's that. Now for some comments here. Elwell says, maybe the final solution is to round up the homeless into work camps where they can be productive, right? That's where this is going. So this reminds me, actually, and it made me think about the Deep Space Nine episode, where, I forget the name of the episode. It's like a two-parter, where the crew goes back into the past, into the 21st century, right? Where California, where San Francisco specifically, was cordoning off into these areas where, well, rich people, they could get out, or people who were working, have jobs, they can get out, but the poor people were put in sanctuary, basically what they called sanctuary, right? Cities. And so, I mean, is that the next step? Is that what we're going to do? Well, I mean, there's an employment problem. People can't get jobs. So we're just going to put them into a poor ghettos and wall it around. I mean, that's scary. There's more comments here. The Jinxana says, here in my hometown, they put together a task force to deal with homelessness, as if the answer isn't right in front of their faces. It's true. Get people homes. Homeless people need homes. Oh, what are you talking about? You're just going to give everybody who doesn't have a home a home? Yeah, that's kind of the general idea. Yeah. I mean, you don't want them sleeping in the street. You give them a place to stay. Even if it's a cheap apartment. You know how many jobs you could create building apartments, right, for homeless people? Because right now, you have more homeless people, or I'm sorry, you have more homes that are empty than there are homeless people. Weird. It's almost as if we just let homes be unoccupied while allowing people to sleep out in the street. Weird how that happens. But imagine, like I said, how many jobs you could create building these apartment complexes for homeless people and then managing those properties. And look, it's an investment into people, right? You know, you do something for them, give them job training, help them out, do things like fund, addiction programs. Like I said, some could, because some people who are on the street do have addiction issues, and some are veterans, some have mental health issues, some are just, have been pushed out of where they live, can't afford an apartment or can't afford a house. I mean, look, there's almost no place in the United States where you can afford an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, on minimum wage. It has gotten so crazy to where people can barely afford to live. Even people who are working have to live out of their cars. I mean, that's horrifying in what is supposed to be the richest nation on earth. So we need to do something about it. And the answer is so obvious. So many obvious. Lower rent. It's another one. Sarge says, Trump, we can't give homeless people homes. Then they would be homely. Okay. And then great comment here from Alonzo Bowden, who is not in the chat, by the way, but this was somebody who referenced Alonzo. It's David Richardson, who says, oh, we've got the unemployment crisis. Unemployment didn't become a crisis till white people were unemployed. That's a great comment. All right. So, smart guy. All right. So, let's move on here. We have this election security measure. So, you care about electoral security, you're going to get mad at Republicans. Because, of course, you will. All right. Now, the House just passed an election security measure on Thursday that would require voting systems to use backup paper ballots, something that I've been pushing for some time, in federal elections, while also mandating improvements to election machines. Now, the measure known as Securing America's Federal Elections Act passed on Thursday, and what it would do is it would authorize $600 million for states to bolster their election security. Now, that's good. That's, $600 million. It's a decent amount given to each state to basically modernize, update, and bolster their voting machines and election security, right? Great. Now, it would also give states $175 million biannually to help sustain their election infrastructure. All right, okay. Now, a part of it would also require implementation of cybersecurity safeguards for hardware and software used in elections, which I think what we should do is just completely get rid of voting machines and just replace them with paper ballots. But they're not going that far in this piece of legislation. Now, it would also bar the use of wireless communications devices in election systems and require electronic voting machines to be manufactured in the United States. That last one seems like a no-brainer. If you're going to use an election machine, you would want it to be made here, because you don't know. It's like, if you're buying them from China, what's to stop China from putting something in there that they could, like a back door that they could sneak into, right? And change vote totals or election counts or wipe data or do whatever kind of nefarious thing that they would want to do, right? So, yeah, no-brainer, right? Now, it's not a perfect piece of legislation, but it's better than what we have. So great. I mean, the Democrats, and I got on them for a while, talking about Russia, they're getting into our elections, they're hacking into our systems, etc. And I'm like, well, why don't you do something about it? Why don't you put together a bill to stop that, right? If that's what you're so worried about. Well, now they have, to their credit, right? But what about Republicans? Now, Republicans also complain about election security, right? Except they only do so when it comes to undocumented immigrants, right? So that's the only security they seem to be interested in. But still, where do they fall in this bill? Did they at least take a look and say, okay, you know what, I could agree with this just to prevent foreign actors from being able to easily get into our electoral system? Well, it turns out the full chamber had voted 225 to 184 to send the bill to the Senate. There was one Republican, Florida Representative Brian Mast, who voted for this measure. All the Democrats voted for it. You had one Republican in favor. Wait a minute. What's the deal here? Do Republicans not care about election security after all? What's going on? Well, according to Roll Call magazine, Republicans had acknowledged the urgent need for progress in securing the nation's election systems. We got a funny way of showing it by voting against a election security measure that easily passed the House of Representatives. So now, why vote against this? Well, because federal overreach. Oh, for Christ's sakes. All right. This is according to Republican Representative Rodney Davis. He said this, quote, Democrats' bill focuses on forcing states to restructure their election systems through federal mandates and ignores states' rights to choose the election system that best fits their unique needs. Well, what have the states done so far when it comes to election security? Not a whole lot from what I know. Now, the Illinois Republican has proposed his own election security legislation, which appears to be very sparse on details right now. But he says it, quote, focuses on empowering states and local election officials to update voting infrastructure. Okay, so I think I know what the plan here is, right? The Republican plan is, hey, federal government, why don't you just hand us some money to the states and let us figure it out? Well, now, wait a minute. What's to prevent states from using that money to plug their budget holes as they use a lot of money to do so? I mean, without the details, without some sort of constraints or controls, we don't know what it entails. What does it entail? More details, right? Again, with Republicans, it tends to be, if they're granted block grant money, then they end up doing whatever they want with it, and it's usually not the purpose that it was sent there for. But see, here's the thing, right? The other thing it's government overreach. We want each of our own states to have their own system. Well, the thing is, the Russians or the Chinese, they're not going to be doing cyber attacks against Oklahoma. They're going to do it against the United States government. Now, that has an impact on all of us. If you mess with the system in Ohio, for example, then because it's inadequate, or doesn't have the same standard as for example, California or New York, they're not running on the same platform, the same kind of system, where you can go and you can send experts to figure out how to fix it or how to plug security holes or stop vulnerabilities. Well, then you could seriously mess up an election. So it doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't it be stupid to have every state have their own way? I mean, to me, it sounds really dumb. But the bill did pass the House. Now it goes to the Senate, where it reportedly faces stiff opposition from Republicans. In fact, so far, Mitch McConnell has refused to allow votes on any election security proposals, citing concerns that measures erode state authority over elections. You know what they call Mitch McConnell? The Grim Reaper. That's what Mitch McConnell calls himself. He's like, you can just call me the Grim Reaper because I kill everything that comes to the floor. Oh, you want to do something in the Senate to protect our elections? Nope, not going to happen. Oh, because it's a win for Democrats. It's a political win. Or maybe it's the fact that Mitch McConnell doesn't care about election security. You can talk about states' rights and use states' rights as a screen all day, but they're not just attacking Alabama. No, they're helping all of us. Earlier today, there was a massive DDoS attack from China that took out Cloudflare, right? Now, Cloudflare is, you have a lot of websites, about maybe 70% of the internet that uses Cloudflare, that just got knocked out today. There was a lot of websites that were out. And so maybe you want to start looking at security. If they can do that to commercial stuff, they can certainly do it to our election stuff. Now, of course, it doesn't help. I'd be remiss if I didn't actually address the fact that we are also doing cyber attacks against other countries. For example, we've been launching cyber attacks against Russia. Now, you guys probably don't know that, right? But earlier this month, there was a New York Times report where it said that we are actually launching and trying to implant malware deep inside of Russian systems. And that apparently the defense secretary went and did an end run against Donald Trump. They don't even have to tell him that it's going on. So he had no clue that it was happening. In fact, the incursion, they said, into the Russian electric power grid seems to have been conducted under new legal authorities in the military authorization bill passed by Congress last year. Now, how come nobody knew about that? How come Donald Trump didn't know that it took power away from him? Oh, that's right, because he doesn't read. Now, under the law, the defense secretary can authorize, without special presidential approval, routine clandestine military activity in cyberspace. It's amazing. Now the defense secretary basically can conduct cyber warfare without even telling the president. Who is he accountable to anymore? No one. Well, that is not what we should, the kind of system that we should have. We're supposed to have checks and balances. The president is supposed to be informed. Yes, I realize the president is a moron who's probably going to take the side of Russia no matter what. But he should still know. All right? We need to go through the proper stuff. Now, in interviews with current and former government officials, and this is how we found out, right? Over the past 3 months with the Times, officials described the deployments of U.S. computer code into Russia's grid and other targets as part of a shift to a more offensive strategy. Again, without Trump knowing it. As for him not knowing about it, Pentagon and intelligence officials described to the Times broad hesitation to tell Trump about the details of the operations against Russia. They tell the Times that there was concern over how Donald Trump would react and the possibility that Trump might reverse the operations or discuss it with foreign officials. So, look, I can understand the reasoning, but you still can't do that. Again, Trump's a man baby who loves Putin. But going around the president to launch clandestine military activity against another country? That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. And the fact that we're doing this right now, that the defense secretary is launching all these cyber attacks against other countries, Russia, maybe China, who knows where else. We don't even have a secure electoral system here in the country because of Republicans, because of Mitch McConnell, that are saying, well, we can't do that because the overreach. No, that's so stupid. Mitch McConnell's an idiot. Either that, or again, he doesn't care. He doesn't care if somebody actually does, and they didn't. Look, you guys know that I don't believe that they changed vote total. They didn't change vote totals in 2016. They, didn't really do all of that. What they ended up doing is a spear phishing campaign and ended up getting, access to Hillary Clinton's emails, right? You don't think that they couldn't hack into our electoral system and actually change the votes? They didn't, but they could. They could. And so I'm not saying go to war with Russia, go to war with China for knocking off Cloudflare, and making it so that I couldn't look up a story earlier. No, I'm not saying that. I'm also, what I'm saying is that maybe we should stop doing cyber war against other countries. And if we're going to, then we should at least make sure we're protected at home by passing cyber security bills. But again, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans, they don't want to do that. And so either they massively underestimate the Russians or the Chinese or anybody else who might try to hack into our systems, or they don't care about other nations meddling in our elections if it benefits them. And those are two very scary ideas. Very scary things. Okay. All right. Moving on. More infuriating news. All right. Now, Eli Lilly is one of the biggest drug manufacturers in the country. Now, they make billions of dollars in profit each year off of life-saving drugs like insulin. Now, all this profit, of course, comes from making sure these drugs are incredibly expensive. In fact, there has been a lot of allegations of price gouging. Now, it wasn't always like that, apparently, according to a former executive of Eli Lilly. Now, she recently came out and explained how these companies went from having an atmosphere of making drugs for, the betterment of mankind, right, to only worrying about making massive profits. Now, this is Frances Leith, right? So now she worked in management for Eli Lilly, but no longer does. When she did, she saw firsthand how when the company started jacking up the price of drugs and why. Now, one of the examples, of course, is their Humalog insulin. Back in 1996, when she worked for the company, it was priced at about $21 per vial. Now, that same insulin costs $275 today. Now, that's shocking when you look at those price differences in such a short amount of time, especially considering how it's not any more expensive to make. It still costs about $5 a vial to make. Now, Leith, she says, look, from what I've seen being in there and being part of those discussions, that's not surprising at all. I am not surprised a bit. In fact, when she started her career, she explained, there was an internal company slogan Leith would hear, quote, "We make drugs as if people's lives depend on it." Okay, well, now that was back in 1987. Now, back then, the company's portfolio had focused on medicines for acute illnesses, including several antibiotics. One of the things she says I liked about working there was the conversation was very much about patients. You could see that our products like Ciclor were treating infections and saving lives. Now, she worked there, she worked in the finance division, then she decided she was going to go back to school, complete her MBA at Cornell's Johnson Graduate School of Management, and go back to work at that same company in a new position. Now, she ended up going to Lilly's Business Development and Strategic Planning Division, and while she was in that role, she ended up working directly with senior management. Now, when she started working with management, she, around 2000, she said, is where everything started going really, really wrong for the patient. Now, in 2000, Lilly was waging a court battle aimed at protecting one of their patents. Now, that patent is Prozac. So, look, I think patent law at this point is a joke. I think there's these companies that hold on to patents for way too long. They take it to court. And there's a specific phrase for it, but I can't recall at this moment. But they just hold on to it. Maybe it's like green labeling or something. Probably not. But they basically, like I said, hold on to these patents for inordinate amount of times so that they can, of course, keep the monopoly on the drug and keep prices high, continue to keep that profit flowing. So now, in this case, Eli Lilly was trying to hold on to the patent for Prozac. Now, they ended up losing that. Now, that was a giant hit to the company because Prozac was earning this company $2.6 billion a year. That was a quarter of Eli Lilly's entire yearly revenue. Now, when the company lost that case, its stock price dropped more than 30% in anticipation of Prozac's patent expiring into August of 2001. Now, the impact, Leith says, was immediate. Quote, there was a huge amount of external pressure to get earnings back up and the stock price along with them. And look, this is a good example of why a drug company shouldn't be for profit. Inside the company, you had staff saying, quote, we just lost $2 billion a year. Am I going to get laid off? Now, lucky for them and unlucky for us, the company actually had a big win. In clinical trials, its Zygris product was proven to be effective at treating severe sepsis. Now, what is sepsis? It's basically a complication from infection that killed about 225,000 people each year and had no approved drug to fight it. Sepsis is incredibly deadly if you have it. Now, just 2 months after Prozac lost its patent, the FDA gave Lilly the green light to sell Xigris, and of course, the timing for the company couldn't have been better. The Wall Street Journal back in September 2001 had reported, quote, Xigris may just be what the doctor ordered for Lilly. Well, I guess when it comes to their profit margin. So now the question, of course, inevitably came up, so now that we can sell this drug, how much do we sell it for? You're going to be shocked to find out that when they're trying to figure out how much to sell something for, they don't just look at manufacturing, how much it's going to cost, and potential profit margin. They basically pull it out of their butt, as you're going to see. Leith recalls a primary consensus forming around the price of about $500 per dose. Now, that's still a lot of money. $500, they explain, was about 100 times more than the company's manufacturing cost. So now that would have actually netted them quite a bit of profit. But it was not enough. You think $500 is bad? Here's the next quote. It's going to piss you off. Leith said she heard, quote, all of a sudden the price everyone talked about wasn't $500 per dose. It was $10,000 per dose. She recalled, quote, someone just pulled that figure out of their derriere and then it just became the number. Jesus, man. I mean, can you believe? Of course you can believe it. Their greed knows no bounds. Sepsis is incredibly deadly, right? And so what this drug company is saying is, well, we got to make profit. Your money or your life, basically. But it gets even worse. It gets more disgusting. But the point that I'm trying to make is that it's so incredibly arbitrary. They decided we're just going to pull $10,000 out of our butt and see if we can get it. I mean, that's a lot of money. So per dose, $10,000 per dose. Oh, but again, it gets worse because the reasoning is so incredibly gross. But first, Eli Lilly, of course, is not the first company to do this. Actually, they might be. But later on, a lot of people took the example from Eli Lilly. In 2015, the Senate Finance Committee conducted an 18-month investigation into how Gilead Services arrived at then record prices of $84,000 and higher for its sofosbuvir-based hepatitis C medication. Now, the Senate investigation found that the company considered the remarkable effectiveness of the medicine, whose rights it had purchased. They did not do the R&D. They did not develop it. They just bought it off somebody else. They looked closely at what the market would bear, mainly insurance companies. And by the way, this is why your insurance is so ungodly expensive. And they set the highest price they thought they could get away with. Look, this is what they're doing, right? Now, you think that they'd get a lot of pushback for that, right? Well, apparently they were prepared for that. Once the drug was released, one company vice president offered a pep talk in an internal email. He said, quote, and this is in late 2013, right? Let's hold our position whatever competitors do, or whatever the headlines. Let's not fool to advocacy pressure in 2014. And so you know what they did? They held on to it. It worked. It worked. In the 21 months after the hepatitis medicines were introduced, the company collected $20.6 billion in revenue. That translated into a corporate-wide profit margin of 50%. Now, you want to know why it worked, why it was effective? Because without medication, people die. It's your money or your life. There's more. That same year, the Wall Street Journal published an inside account of how Pfizer executives decided to set the price of a new breast cancer drug. As their Gilead counterparts did, Pfizer's team ignored the research and manufacturing costs and instead focused on discovering the maximum price insurers would be willing to pay and at what price level physicians would balk at prescribing the drug. Now, instead of going with $10,000 a month per month cost, Pfizer said, well, we're going to try to do it a little skeevier, right? To try to trick people into buying. Executives decided that the new breast cancer drug, like microwaves and televisions and things like that, would be sold at $9,850 a month. So it's kind of like, it's $99.99. Well, in this case, it's $98.50 for a month instead of $10,000. Well, I mean, we could have went with $10,000, but $98.50 sounds a little bit more fair. Now, see, again, that was after Zygris, which was back in 2001. You could say that they set the stage for this. So now, what did Leith do when these discussions were taking place back in 2001 to see how much money they're going to get for Zygris? Well, now, she told her boss, after this whole $10,000 per dose thing came around, that she's like, well, look, it's not justified. You cannot justify this price by either research or manufacturing costs. Even with a healthy profit added in, $10,000 is just way too much. Now, here's what her boss responded with. Quote, if your grandma's on the table, no one's going to blink at paying $10,000 to save her life. That's an executive at Eli Lilly. That's one of her bosses. Hey, man, if your grandma's on the table, what would you pay to save her life? Just give us all you have, all your money. If you ever want to see grandma again. I mean, my God. And now it gets even worse. Leith had said, quote, it was a phrase that came to be repeated in the Lilly executives' pricing discussions from then on. If grandma is on the table. So that's how they justify that. And I'm sorry, that was not a quote from Eli. That was Leith. That was actually from the article in Common Dreams. So that's what they're going with, right? That was a rationale going forward. Hey, man, look, yeah, of course we're going to jack this up. Why? Well, hey, if your grandma's on the table, you pay it. Wouldn't you? These are horrible people. These aren't people that are out to help people. These aren't normal business people. These are predators. They have no conscience. I mean, seriously, ripping people off. Hey, man, look, if your grandma's on the table, of course you pay it. Nobody says that except for a sociopath. I mean, it's profit motive above everything else. Hey, man, if you don't want grandma to die, you better pay us a ransom. Just give us everything so we can line our pockets. It is the most sickening thing. People like this guy, you guys make me sick. You guys make us all sick. You're lowlives. Bags of excrement. That's what you are. You deserve to be shut down, thrown out into the street, and all the profit that you extorted from good, hard-working people that you screwed over, that profit deserves to be returned to them, back to their pockets. Words cannot express the disgust I feel for the executives at these different places. Pfizer, Eli Lilly, the other drug manufacturers. I mean, my God. You know what the price ended up being for this drug? Not $10,000. $6,500 a dose. Now remember, $500. This is where the conversation started. $500 was 100 times more money than it takes to manufacture the drug. Yet they wanted to get $6,500 from it. And then, of course, they ended up getting their ransom for at least a short time. In the end, Zygris did not live up to the hopes of either the company or the patients, despite being $6,500 a dose. It didn't even work. Although Lilly consistently made $100 million a year from the drug, it was pulled from the market in 2011 after further clinical testing showed that it did not have a positive impact on patient survival. So not only was it super expensive, it didn't even work right. All the promise behind that drug, behind the justification, behind that massive price gouging increase, I mean the soul-crushing increase of that price, wasn't even worth it in the end. Wasn't even worth it in the end. My God, man. So now what happened to Leith, right? Now she was there during this discussion. This is how we know. Now, while she was working at Eli Lilly, she made a ton of money. She was making six figures. She would get bonuses of $30,000 a year. She made a boatload of money. But in the end, she said, look, I can't justify being here anymore. I don't care that I'm making all this money. I got to go. She said, quote, I was struggling, both emotionally and physically. I felt like I was participating in things that conflicted with being a Christian. Or even just a decent human being. She ended up quitting the company and now works as a realtor. Now, when talking to Common Dreams about this, she noted of how Eli Lilly is right now currently price gouging on insulin. And she said this, quote, they have not generated the next blockbuster drug, and they feel the pressure to make as much money as they did when they had a blockbuster. So they're making up the difference with their chronic care medicines. That strategy was an active part of conversation when I was there. So that's what they're doing. That's what Eli Lilly does. Hey, man, we don't have a blockbuster drug. Why? Most of these companies aren't even looking in research and development at this point. I don't remember if it was Pfizer or not that pulled research from a drug that would have, I think, cured Alzheimer's. They pulled it so that they could focus on basically drugs that continue to make them a profit. They don't want to cure things. They just want drugs that for chronic illnesses so they can continue to go back to that well, so they can continue to make those short-term profit margins. It is sickening. It is disgusting. And so that is why we cannot have these kinds of drugs being used to make a profit. Bernie Sanders calls out these pharmaceutical companies. He's absolutely right. They are bloodsuckers. That all they care about is massive profit. Now, Leith agrees. She said, quote, I've concluded that there are some drugs that simply do not belong in the hands of a for-profit company. They are driven by motivations that have nothing to do with the health of the patients. And that's what you have to understand. They are not on your side. They're on no one's side but their own. The shareholders, the executives, and themselves, lining their pockets with your money. We've got to eliminate that profit motive. We've got to rein in these blood-sucking companies because they've shown that they will have no hesitation in crushing us beneath their boot. We've got to fight back, and we've got to stop them. Great way to do that, Medicare for all, rein in these drug companies, and Bernie Sanders and a lot of progressives, we have plans to do that. So if you're as frustrated and as angry at this story, consider who you're voting for in 2020. It may be the difference between life or death. Okay. Man. That's a depressing story. So now, let's finish up. I know we're over time. That's okay. At least we're not leading into TYT. So let's move in to the last story here. And that is, of course, healthcare while black. Continue our theme. All right. So now you guys have heard walking while black, grilling while black, being at the pool while black. Well, now you have being treated at a hospital and walking while black. Now, this is according to a story in CNN. A black man named Shaquille Dukes says that he was racially profiled by police officers while he was being treated at an Illinois hospital and had decided to go for a walk. Now, police had arrested Shaquille Dukes of misdemeanor disorderly conduct after a security guard called the police on them after saying that Dukes was trying to steal medical equipment. Medical equipment that he had been currently hooked up to. He was still wearing a hospital gown and carrying an IV. Now, I'm going to show you a video of this arrest because it is deeply disturbing how they treat black people in this country. Watch.
I don't want you to remove that arm because if you pull it out,
It's from Cletus?
this man is so
Yeah. doctor told me and my parents that it's okay. How I'm saying this is bullshit. I know this game way too much. Officer Moore, you just came here. The tone is here. Okay, excuse me. Is Ian up there? I just spoke to Jen.
Hey.
Not give you permission to leave the hospital. But nobody said we're leaving. Okay, we're well, you're on city property, not hospital property. He took me up.
Being arrested for taking a walk with an IV. Now, Dukes wrote on Facebook that he was on vacation in Freeport. It's about 100 miles west of Chicago. Now, during that vacation, he came down with double pneumonia. Wow. Now, he ended up going to the hospital, as you see. He told CNN that he was admitted to FHN Memorial Hospital for 2 days. On the morning of the second day, June 9th, he said he was feeling better, and he asked the doctors, hey, can I go for a walk? Now, he went outside with his boyfriend and his brother, still wearing his hospital gown and pushing in a steroid and antibiotic IV drip. When they went outside, Duke said a security guard called them over to his car and asked if they were trying to, quote, leave the hospital and sell the IV equipment on eBay. eBay. Oh, man, that black guy outside with the IV, he must be trying to sell it. Probably to get money for drugs or something. Really? Is this what we're doing? Apparently in America, that's what we're doing. You couldn't just go and ask him his name. Hey, what you doing out here? What's going on? Can we help you? And he could just say, look, doctor said it was okay. I'm just taking a walk. Okay, have a good day, sir. I mean, that should be the interaction, but apparently that's not what happens. Now, Dukes, understandably, was very, very angry about this. He said, quote, I was livid. I was irate. The first thing he said to me wasn't, what's your name? Can I help you? But are you stealing this? Duke said as his boyfriend began recording the encounter, as Dukes was trying to explain to the security guard that they were on a walk. Now, the security guard, of course, called for police backup. Dukes told CNN. He said the guard told police, I have 3 black males attempting to steal medical equipment from the hospital. So no, maybe we misunderstand the situation. No. We have 3 black men that are just stealing our stuff, and we need to have you come and arrest them. Arrest them for taking a walk. Now, police did arrest him, as you saw in the video, charged him with a misdemeanor disorderly conduct. 2 of the men were also charged with misdemeanor resisting arrest. How dare you resist arrest? We weren't doing anything wrong. We were outside. We were taking a walk. Of course we're going to, fight this. Of course we're going to say, hey, what are you doing? I'm sick. I'm out here. I'm, admitted to the hospital. Doc says I can go and take a walk because I didn't want to stay in bed the whole time. Now you're accusing me of stealing? You're accusing me of stealing. Yeah, of course he's going to be upset. Who wouldn't be? Wouldn't you be? If you're a regular person, you're somebody who looks like me, this would never happen to me, by the way. Ever happen to me. Now, it gets worse for Dukes. He said that before CNN, he told CNN before his arrest, police officers took his emergency inhaler and had removed his IV, though a doctor did not remove the IV for him. Now, police, obviously, they pushed back on this a little bit, and they said, well, the IV wasn't removed by us. No, it was a medical professional that removed that. And they took him back to the hospital in handcuffs. Now, later on, they, of course, took him to the police department, and while that was happening, Dukes said he suffered an asthma attack. He alleged that the officers withheld his asthma inhaler from him until they arrived. He could have died. Duke said that he was kept in the back of a police car until paramedics arrived. He told CNN that he was then transported back to the hospital in handcuffs. So first they took him to the police station. He has an asthma attack, which they withheld his inhaler. The paramedics came to get him at the police station and took him back to the hospital while he was handcuffed. Are you serious? What the hell is going on here? I mean, come on, dude. Seriously. Now, the Freeport Police Department confirmed on Sunday in a statement that Dukes had filed a complaint afterwards, alleging unfair and biased conduct by responding officers. those officers shouldn't have been there in the first place. The department said that it's retained an outside third-party investigator to, quote, gather the facts, interview all parties involved, and determine whether officers conducted themselves in adherence to department policies and guidelines. You know what that means? They're probably going to find that the police did nothing wrong. Of course. Or maybe, oh, our bad. We apologize. We're sorry for arresting you. That would be the best that they could hope for. Ridiculous. Now, the investigator is identified as Mitch Davis, who had served as a police chief for 18 years in Hazelcrest, Illinois, a suburb south of Chicago. Davis, who is black, is also a member of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. So now, the investigator happened to have been a former cop. Oh, but hey, look, it's a former black chief of police. Of course you're going to get treated fairly. No, you don't understand. Even if it's a black chief of police, again, that is no guarantee that he's not going to side with the cops. In some situations, you have black police officers that go along with the other police officers who are white. That same sort of thin blue line, protect the cops mentality is ingrained in a lot of people. So, do I think there will be justice in this situation? I don't know. I don't believe so. I hope so, but I don't believe so. But here we have another situation where there's that automatic assumption of criminality due to the color of somebody's skin. And for God's sakes, we've got to get over this as a country. As a country, as a people, as a society. Because we're going to continue, if we don't, we're going to continue to arrest innocent people for doing nothing but normal things that regular, everyday Americans who look like me can do with impunity. That's what racism is. And that's why we have to stop it. Okay. So, that's it for the show. Thank you for tuning in, going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Please subscribe to the channel as well, where we do shows every day, Monday through Friday, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. Sign up, become a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation if you like our segments, if you like the stuff that we do, and want to continue to support independent progressive media. Keep us on the air. All right, guys and gals, thank you so much for tuning in today. It was a great show, great comments, great audience as usual. We'll see you guys tomorrow. You have a great day. And remember, change begins with you. Love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.